It is April 1st, and so it is Sexual Assault Awareness Month and Child Abuse Prevention Month. So this is why we're touching base on what child abuse prevention is, because by preventing child abuse, that is how we prevent sexual assault, and it's also how we prevent human trafficking. And I'll go into touch on how that is. Here's my contact information at the bottom, my email, my number. So if you ever need to get a hold of me for collaborations or maybe a client question or anything like that, feel free to reach me. Anytime I start any presentation, because we go to middle schools, we go to high schools, we do parent presentations, we even go to elementary schools. I like to say group agreements because anytime you're talking about any heavy topic, you should be able to make your surrounding area with respect, right? And so making sure that people feel comfortable when you're starting to bring a heavy topic and let people know this is going to be a heavy topic. So the number one thing is to have respect, right? Because we're all going to be different. We have our own different families, cultures, upbringings, and so we need to be respectful that we're going to have different experiences on education, knowledge, and we want to make sure we're non-judgmental for each other because again, we're going to have different levels of education and experiences that lead us to know what child abuse is or what human trafficking is. We want to come with an open mind and open heart and understanding there's so many different ways that people can enter the system. And so, again, making sure that we hold non-judgment and being understanding that people will have different life experiences and stories. And if someone feels comfortable sharing any experiences or questions or anything in this group, that it stays in this group, right? Because we set a comfortable space here to talk about this, but that doesn't give us okay to share anyone's personal experiences outside of this meeting. And then to check in with yourself, right? Maybe you have heard about child abuse or heard about human trafficking, sexual violence, but usually just push your thoughts or feelings to the side. And you're like, oh, just accept the information. But I want you to know what you're feeling, right? Like if you're feeling sad, mad, if things are feeling heavy, if you need to take a break, all of that is okay, right? Just recognize what you're feeling and what you need to cope with that emotion afterwards. And then these are just a little bit about the services we offer. If anyone wants to get a presentation more in depth about what we do, all our services are free. We support survivors of sexual violence at any point in their life. Um, we also help anyone under the age of 18 if they've experienced any form of child abuse. So if it's sexual abuse, physical neglect, domestic violence, even community violence, like gang violence, maybe stabbings or shootings, extreme bullying, then they can get free services with us. And then we also support survivors of human trafficking, and that's both sectors, right? Labor trafficking, sexual exploitation. And then these are all the services we offer that is completely free. There's a 24-hour helpline number. So if you ever need to get a hold of us, like for resources, for any questions, what are my rights as a survivor? I just need someone to talk to. That's what we're there for. Our counseling and therapy is free. We do free presentations. We're in schools. And if you are interested in volunteering with us, that is a great way to get involved with preventing child abuse as well. I included the definitions on human trafficking just so that we can get refamiliarized, just in case if anyone just needs a touch up on the definitions, right? So as I mentioned, for human trafficking, there's two sectors where someone can be exploited. It's forced labor or sexual exploitation. And we do offer another presentation on human trafficking. So if you guys were interested in learning more about this, feel free to reach me. And then anyone under the age of 18, forced fraud or coercion does not need to be included for human trafficking. Even if someone's 12, 15, 17, and they said, you know what, I'm going on dates, this is my girlfriend, boyfriend, I'm taking the pictures, it is still human trafficking. But we even tell middle schoolers and high schoolers, right, like we're not using the word prostitute, we're using the term C-sex because being mindful of the language is really important. And I am, if anyone on the chat maybe wants to say like yes or no, but who here is familiar with ACEs? Is this something you guys have heard about? Is talked about, right? A few people, okay, a few hands. Awesome. ACEs is one of my favorite things to address because it's really important in preventing child abuse and preventing human trafficking, right? So ACEs are traumatic experiences, either personal experiences in our life, or it can even be the environment that we grow up in that can affect the way that we grow up mentally, physically, emotionally, and it just has different outcomes just depending on the support we get. So a lot of times people say child abuse, domestic violence, sexual violence, that's behind the door issues. We can't solve that. When in reality, they're public health issues, and we can solve that if we address them. So adverse childhood experiences are very common for human trafficking survivors. Human trafficking is not the first form of trauma many of them experience. Most of the time, it's one of these. On average, they experience 6 to 8 of these by the time they're 17, right? And so the more aces you get, the more strikes you get, that's the more risk it puts you at. Because if people are not stepping in and showing what healthy boundaries are, talking about life skills, or making sure that when people are experience any form of abuse or discrimination, if they feel unsupported or isolated, that's what leads to the negative outcomes, right? So addressing adverse community environments and childhood experiences is a way that we prevent child abuse. Even some things like we just went through COVID, the whole pandemic. That is another A square that many people had because we didn't have the same amount of resources for people. And so as a community, we can address what these issues are and how we can have community centers to address these. That's how we can prevent it. So groups with higher risk of trafficking, a lot of people may say like, oh, we didn't have people who migrated here, we wouldn't have human trafficking. When in reality, like that's not true, right? Like perpetrators are taking advantage of people who are economically underserved, and that is because of our government not serving certain individuals, right? So individuals who recently migrated here are at one of the higher risk of being exploited. And that may be because of a language barrier, maybe because not knowing your rights as a worker. It could be also because you're seeking connection and not knowing what red flags and green flags are. So recent migration and relocation is one of the highest risk out there. Um, Discrimination, being judged for your ethnicity, your race, that is can put people at risk because it makes people not trust certain support systems, right? Because a lot of people have been oppressed by government systems, and so they may not want to seek services. Individuals in juvenile hall, foster care, individuals who are running away from home, it is shown that their home is not safe, right? Like that is why they're choosing not to be there because they don't feel like their home is safe. Or even if people are being judged at school and people are calling people annoying, promiscuous, or risky kids, or attention seeking, then that just creates judgment on that kid and they don't feel comfortable there. So if youth are being judged at home, if they're being judged at school, they're not going to want to be there. And then the fact that Monterey County is a huge county, if you don't have a lot of community resource centers, then they're going to be left to be on the streets. And it is said that it takes on average 48 hours of a youth being on the street before a perpetrator will try to come up and solicitate them for an act. But even just working with youth has been way sooner than that, right? Like it definitely can be within an hour of them leaving their placement, of them being out of care. And so this is why it's very important to make sure that we can make our home a safe environment. If we can make school safer, more community clubs, that is what's going to make a safer community. Or even with the LGBTQ plus community, right? Like if people are judging their pronouns, judging who they choose to date or how they want to identify themselves or express themselves, then they're going to be seeking somewhere until they feel accepted, right? So it's not just because you're a minority or just because you identify as one that you're going to get targeted. It's that if you don't feel like you are supported or you don't have your basic needs met, like your food or clothing, anything like that, that's what puts people at risk. And then there is a couple parenting styles that has been talked about. And just depending on what parenting style you have can lead to a different outcome on what child you raise, right? So authoritarian, this one in the corner right here, focuses on obedience. So this parenting style is my way or the highway. I set the rules and you follow them, no room for the child to discuss anything. So usually kids who have these types of parents would either be really timid and shy and not want to experiment or try to new things, or they're going to be really sneaky and try to do what they can as long as they try to avoid being caught by their parent. So that is authoritarian. Authoritative is whenever if a child does something bad, the parent will discipline them, but give a reason and explanation as to why this is, and the child will understand, right? It's not from out of nowhere. They're creating a conversation and they create a compromise, right? The child is able to voice how they're feeling. The parent will say, I understand your feelings, but you still need to be disciplined. So they have that conversation. Permissive parenting is whenever parenting is more kids will be kids. Oh, let them have fun. They don't set rules. They let the kids do the rules for them. And so this type of parenting style, children tend to be a little less regulated. They don't rely on structure. They don't really focus on job training. They do things more at their own feelings and how they want to, but they're not used to structure. The next one is uninvolved parenting, and this is whenever someone's more neglectful, right? That they don't really pay attention to the child, they don't give questions, they just let the child go on about their day. Um, and usually with this type of parenting, this child is again very isolated, very quiet. They have low self-esteem, and they really find it hard to connect with other people. And so they say authoritative parenting style tends to lead to individuals who have higher self-esteem. They have more confidence. They have higher building skills on connecting with their community, social skills, and they just trust themselves, as opposed to uninvolved parenting, right? The youth feels like they don't know any structure. They don't know how to move or ask questions. Permissive parenting, again, they just go with their feelings. If they choose not to do something, then it's going to be really hard to get them there. So all these different parenting styles are definitely important to address because if we meet youth in our life, we should see what kind of parenting were they did they have, right? And then letting them know that it's not their fault, right? Because a lot of times children will judge themselves and how they grew up, but in reality, they're mirroring the environment that they grew up in from what their parents showed them. So whenever we see all these different parenting styles, it definitely can trigger why this child is the way they are. And has anyone ever heard of Harry Harlow's rhesus monkey experiment before? It was an experiment in the 1950s, maybe a couple people, right? And so I'm going to play this video. It's about 6 minutes just to show how important connection is, right? And I'll talk a little bit more about the outcomes of this experiment after the video, but I just think it's something that's really impactful to see on just connection and child development.
Let me show you a monkey raised on a nursing wire mother.
Can you guys hear okay? Okay, perfect.
Now here are 106's two mothers. As you can see, it was weaned on a wire mother. Here's baby 106. Watch.
He's going to the wire mother.
He's got to eat to live.
Oh, he's going back.
He's back on the cloth mother, and he'll stay on the cloth mother. Actually, this baby spends from 17 to 18 hours a day on the cloth mother and less than 1 hour a day on the wire mother. We had predicted that the variable of contact comfort would be a variable of measurable importance, but we were unprepared to find that it completely overwhelmed and overshadowed all other variables, including those of nursing.
Frankly, Doctor, if it comes to a choice between wire and cloth, it's reasonable to expect that any child will go to the cloth. It's a matter of creature comfort, like a baby with its blanket. But is this really love?
Well, what do you mean by saying that a baby loves its mother? Certainly one thing we mean is that it gets a great feeling of security in the presence of the mother. Now, Mr. Collingwood, wouldn't you say that if you frightened a baby, that it went running to its mother, was comforted, and then all the fear disappeared and was replaced by a complete sense of security that that baby loved its mother? Now, in this experiment, this is the apparatus we use.
That looks diabolical.
That's just the way the baby monkey feels about it. Flashing eyes, loud sound, moving mechanical parts, all of these things are designed to frighten a monkey. Now here we have a peaceful, resting baby monkey. Let's find out what his reactions to his mother are when we frighten him.
All right.
And he does what any child will do in a similar situation.
He runs away.
It's more than running away. He was running to his mother, to touch her, to drive away his fear. Contact with the mother changes his entire personality. Look, now he's actually threatening the diabolical object. All right. This gives us part of the picture of the strength of infantile love. This is a 6-foot square room with a few toys and other objects. But to the monkey, it's much more menacing. We know that when our own children are taken to a strange place without their mothers, they are often overwhelmed with fear. This room is just such a new and strange environment for the baby monkeys. No mother is in there. Now, let's put a monkey into the room. Notice how cautiously he enters the room. He's searching for comfort, but nothing relieves his disturbance. Now we'll take the baby monkey out and put in a wire mother.
Now, this one was nursed by a wire mother.
That's right, all his life.
She doesn't seem to help much.
Now, we'll try the same test with a cloth mother in the room. You see the contrast in the behavior? Despite the fact that the wire mother nursed him, she could offer this infant nothing in the way of affection or security. But here the monkey, by rubbing against the cloth mother, as if he were seeking as much contact comfort as he could get, builds up his reservoir of affection and security. First, his body relaxes as the fear disappears. But above and beyond this, new positive response patterns appear. He now goes out to explore and investigate this new, strange world. He is now a normal, happy, curious baby.
Okay, does anyone maybe want to share their thoughts, comments, or what maybe their opinions on the video were? Was it surprising? And then if you want to type in the chat, feel free.
Thanks for sharing that video, Destiny. That's a really powerful scientific example of how our experiences impact attachment patterns, which then impact the behaviors that we display.
Yeah, thank you. Right, so for this experiment, it was done about the 1950s, almost 1960s, and he would take these baby monkeys from their mother as soon as they were born. So some of them had no contact at all with any monkeys, and it definitely shows how different, like even if you are a caregiver and you are providing basic needs like food and a place to sleep, if you are not providing words of affirmation, if you're not providing comfort, that child is not going to feel secure. They're not going to feel confident, and this shows it. The crazy thing about this experiment too is that it definitely was frowned upon by social workers and other psychologists because of how inhumane it was treating the monkeys, right? Because it's not natural to be taken away from comfort. Like we're humans, we thrive on connecting with people. And so this experiment is one of the many other experiments that led to forming regulations on what kind of testing is okay and what is not permitted just for the mental health safety of anyone that they're testing. That is a good one to share, so thank you. And then here's another couple of theories from other psychologists and psychoanalysts. So Eric Erickson's stages of development. Throughout our journey in life, we have different roles that we will meet. And depending on our certain ages, we will get to these roles. I'm going to talk about how trauma can affect how we get into these roles, but I'm just going to go over what it looks like. Right. So first, we are born as infants and we develop trust versus mistrust. That's when you kind of get familiar with your family's faces and you kind of learn that confidence and understanding that if your family is going to respond to you and if you can trust that they're going to rely or be there whenever you need them, whether you're angry, whether you're crying, and how to trust yourself as well, right? This is between birth to 18 months. The next one would be autonomy versus shame and doubt. And that is kind of learning the difference between your own actions, what is good, what is bad. And this is between 18 months to 3 years old. The next one is preschool years, which is why socializing is important in these adolescent years, which early Head Start is one of those great programs, right? Because we need to make sure that people have the same access to education and social skills. So preschool years is between 3 to 5, and this is when you learn initiative versus guilt, right? Getting that confidence to do activities in school, learning how to build friendships, learning how to be a good friend with people, right? The next one is school age years, industry versus inferiority. That is between 6 to 11, and that's whenever you learn again more confidence. How do you want to be as a person? How do you feel with your peers? Do you feel confident that you can connect with them, or do you feel more timid and do you feel like you're judging yourself and do you feel inferior to your peers? Identity versus confusion. This is 12 to 18, so your adolescent years, right? And it's learning about who you are. What do you like to spend your time doing? That role confusion, right? Still trying to find out, do you want to fit in with your peers? Are you doing activities that bring you joy? Who are you? Next one is young adulthood. That's intimacy versus isolation. How do you choose to date? How do you go with your friendships? Are you more introverted, extroverted? Building those deep bonds. The next one is middle adulthood, and um, I believe this one is 40 to 65 years old, and this is generativity versus stagnation. So it's going to be whenever you start retiring, are you going to get into volunteer work? Are you going to be more like a homebody? What is your life going to look like? Is it new experiences or similar routines? And the next one is integrity versus despair, and this is from ages 65 to death. But just depending too, when you experience trauma, or maybe even if you are in foster care, it's going to play a role in what stage of development you are in, right? If we have a kid who's taken out of their care and home from when they were birthed to 18 months, then they're going to have issues having trust with others, or even having the ability to mistrust in certain situations, right? Or if someone experiences trauma in their early childhood years, they're going to have confusion on shame. Maybe they're going to start blaming themselves more, not knowing how to provide emotional regulation, right? So just depending on what age you experience your trauma can either make you stagnant in this cycle or can make it really confusing to understand the true lineage of how, if it is from this way or this way, right? It can definitely make your thinking vice versa just based on your upbringing. Which brings me into Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory, right? This is showing that overall, all our experiences shapes us who we are. Overall, we have us as an individual, and we can find out our likes, our dislikes, and we can choose who we choose to be. But we do have things that influence us, and the main points of influences are our friends, our family, neighbors, work, and school. This is known as the microsystem, our immediate system, right? I believe it said that the 5 people you spend the most time with is going to be the behaviors you adopt. So that's your microsystem. And even if we're just thinking about the neighborhoods we grow up in, if it's filled with gang violence, if there's a liquor store at the end of the street, if school is being closed because of dangerous situations around, like it's going to impact how this person sees their community, right? And then we have our exosystem. So it's your friends, parents, it's extended family, it's media. So how do they talk about child abuse? How do they talk about sexual violence and your local government? What policies are in place to make sure that we are taken care of? Our macro system would be social norms, right? Like how do people talk about sexual violence and child abuse? How do people talk about therapy? Is it normalized or is it judged? Political systems, the climate that we're currently in, our culture definitely plays a role in how we're brought up, right? Because different people will um, place emphasis on different things in their life, and that is okay. Just how do we talk about it? And then the time that we're in definitely will play a role in what's influencing us in this moment to develop who we are. But all of these play a role in these stages of development, right? Like who we decide to spend our preschool years with, who we choose to be in our adolescence, what's going on, definitely will influence those areas. Next, we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And this is just showing that at the bottom, our basic needs are being able to breathe right? And that's why it's really awesome being able to practice breathing to work, breathing techniques with individuals, because that's the number one way that we can regulate ourselves. We need food and water. Those are like the three major things we need. We also need a place to sleep. We need to make sure we have clothing and that our basic needs are provided for. If those are not provided for, we cannot reach any of the other areas of the pyramid. So that's really important to address that if anyone, a youth, adult, is missing these basic bottom parts, they're not going to feel safe and secure. They're not going to feel like they belong or loved because, again, they need their physiological needs met. So, if we do want people to meet their best selves, to be creative, to trust themselves and feel confident, to know what their purpose is in life, we need to make sure that all of these areas are met in this pyramid, right? That their basic needs are met, that we make them feel safe and secure, and we make people feel loved and belong by having good family, good friendships, and that we give positive self-esteem by giving positive affirmations to people. On the contrast, if we don't have a supportive community, if we're not giving positive messages, if we just live isolated and let people have the struggle alone, this is what leads to this ACE pyramid of early death, right? So if people are experiencing generational trauma and people are saying, well, it is what it is, my parent had it worse, I'm having it bad, everyone's going to feel that trauma. They said that the child is born with three generations worth of trauma, right? So it's going to impact your health. It will impact your social conditions and how you choose to talk to your peers, if you feel like you can't connect with them, or if no one's going to understand what you're going through. And that leads to adverse childhood experiences, right? Like experiencing any form of abuse, poverty, discrimination. This is what leads to that. And of course, if you experience any of those ACEs, will lead to disrupted neurodevelopment. So not being able to notice whenever you have anxiety, how do you calm your anxiety? If you have PTSD, what does that look like, right? There's different things that can get disrupted when you experience ACEs. Even if someone's not adopting like or if they're adopting unhealthy behaviors, or even if they're not participating in unhealthy coping skills, it can still lead to early death because of that generational trauma that's stored in your body. You will still have the hardship of not being able to talk about your feelings. You would still have diabetes, stress, and all of these do lead to diseases, disabilities, eating disorders, social suicidal ideation because of not having coping skills or healthy regulation skills, right? So that leads to early death. So this is why it's really important to address child abuse, because under child abuse is all this context, right? It's that generational trauma, it's disrupted neurodevelopment, it's not being able to focus in school, not being able to get a job, not being able to take care of their health, either in relationships, physical health, sexual health, mental health, all these areas. So the CDC does have recommendations as a community what we can do to better our community. And um, so I'm going to say what these strategies can be and some examples of them. And even on the next slide, it's going to be what we can do and our call to action. So the number one thing is like strengthening economic supports to families, making sure that we have stable housing, right? If people need support paying rent for a couple months, making sure that people can afford their bills, people can afford internet. If someone needs to leave a situation where there's domestic violence, that they can have the financial means to do so. Promoting social norms that protect against violence and adversity, right? How I mentioned Sexual Assault Awareness Month is a major one, so that we can make sure that people are not using victim blaming phrasing, that we can reach out to our local government and so that they can make proclamations and recognize that this is a month that we can bring a change to the community. We can talk about bystander approaches and what we can do, and also realizing that men and boys can be allies in this prevention work too. Ensuring a strong start for children. I'm a big advocate for Head Start. I think it's really important for children to get information, and especially living in a community where many parents have to work two jobs and not able to support their kids. Ensuring strong start for children makes a difference because they learn how to socialize, they learn how to focus, they learn how to read, they learn how to write, which goes into teaching skills, right? They need to learn how to be social, how to be emotional, and understanding that it's okay to be mad, it's okay to be sad. Those are normal reactions. It's about how we go about it and talking with others. We need to teach them safe dating, healthy relationships. We can teach them parenting skills, family relationship skills. Um, I have a youth I'm working with, and she would just share that one of her therapists is teaching her the difference between like quarters, nickels, and dimes because she's never had someone who was able to teach her that, right? Because she's been in the system for quite a while. So it just really reflected to show that you don't know what education level these kids are or what they do know or what they don't know. And so it really matters just checking in with them and asking them, hey, what are things you're interested in learning? So connecting youth to a caring adults and activities makes a difference. Just one adult checking in with a kid weekly makes a difference for them to be seen, to be heard, and for them to feel that they're not judged and for them to feel that they're not a burden. So we want to make sure that we intervene to lessen immediate and long-term harms, right? Like if you have any youth in your life, have open conversations with them. Ask them like, hey, how's your dating life going? Are there any friends that you really like? What do you like about them? Are there any friendships that make you feel uncomfortable or, what's hard about being your age right now? And if someone ever discloses to you, being blunt and honest and saying, that doesn't sound like a healthy relationship. If you're a mandated reporter, be honest with them and saying like, hey, you know, this definitely sounds like something of concern and as a mandated reporter, I'm going to have to report this, right? And let them know why and telling them it's because I care about your safety. You're not in trouble. We're here to listen on what happened with you, but validating them that again, that they're not in trouble. They didn't do anything bad, but you're here just because you care about them and you care about their safety. So things that are needed, right? There's different areas on how someone can need support. And so even just trying to come up with a circle of where can we prevent child abuse, where can we prevent human trafficking, it is going to be a circle, right? It's like we're the chicken and the egg. Where do we start? Because we need education for individuals, right? Like we need to make sure that they can get elementary school, middle school, and high school, college, so that they can be prepared to get a job. We need to make sure that these elementary students have access to field trips, job training, mentoring, so that they know that there's different works of field out there and they don't have to be limited to what they think is just office work or that it's just that you have to work where your parents work, right? But education also means teaching them about how to be a parent, right? How to use contraception. Even hospitals too. There's some countries where whenever an infant is born, hospitals will provide a whole basket, would provide a crib, diapers, books, and just basic necessities an infant will need so that whenever someone is born, they're not born into poverty, right? That they're not born with um, limitations, that we're able to get them a step ahead if we provide these resources for them. So access to reproductive health and infant care, Head Start, all forms of education, making sure that we check in with people about red flags and green flags. I have a lot of individuals in my life who, when they enter, they were children, right? But now they're becoming teenagers, and now I'm opening that conversation. Hey, what does dating look like for you? Why do you want a girlfriend? What do you want a boyfriend for? Like, why would you like someone? What are you looking for? And at first, it can be uncomfortable to have these conversations, but if you're not checking in with your friends, your family members, your loved ones, no one's checking in with them. So this is why we need to normalize these types of conversations. We need food pantries, clothing pantries. We need to teach kids hobbies and activities, right? And it's hard. There's going to be kids who, what do you like? Oh, nothing. I don't know. And that's why we are the adults in their life to be able to show them what it looks like and give them the examples of what a healthy hobby is. Because if not, it's so easy to just use substances or to drink because that's the fast coping skills we have here. So this is why we need to teach what long-term healthy coping skills are as opposed to fast reaction coping skills. And I just wanted to share a few partners who are doing amazing work. There's definitely a lot more out there. These are just the ones who we have coalition meetings with and are working with youth so that youth have places to go to and that they're not feeling isolated. CPY in Seaside, right? They have an after school program or a resource center for youth who just get engaged if they want to play sports or they even teach them some healthy lessons during the summer camp. So just again, like an after school program for youth to attend to. Seaside Youth Resource Center is another after school program, so teenagers can get referred to there. Maybe if they're dealing with substance use or um, maybe if they're getting into fights, then they would get referred here and they will have like an after school program, resource center place that they can hang out and they'll bring presenters to come talk to the youth as well. Boys and Girls Club, they have one in Salinas and Seaside, and I believe they're opening up a new one in Gonzales. The epicenters here in South Salinas, they assist LGBT youth, but also foster youth. So they have many different programs, drop-in center, food pantry, clothing closet. They're moving locations, but again, they're a great resource to have and just to follow. Police Activities League, they're another organization that helps kids with an after-school program, teach them sports. Sometimes they have field trips. Again, it's just another group that helps kids get involved with the community. CASA. We definitely love our CASA advocates, right? Because when a youth is involved in the system, it's important that they have a good team because many of these youth don't have a reliable parent who's going to check in with them. So having a CASA advocate or maybe even an MCRCC advocate and a social worker who on the good team talking to each other makes them feel supported, right? And so if you have time to become a volunteer, being a CASA advocate is definitely an awesome need in our community. And then we also have resource families, right? If you are someone who works well with kids, if you are able to have that communication and also have that discipline where you can tell youth like, hey, I have a place to stay. Becoming a resource family is a really great thing, right? Thinking about hosting youth, maybe while their current caregivers are away, or even just becoming an adoptive family, it really makes a big difference to youth in our system. And then I'm just sharing some awareness days to get involved. April 1st, which is today, is Child Help National Day of Hope. So every first Wednesday of April is the awareness day for child abuse prevention. So what you can do is wear ribbons. So if you guys ever just want to message us or give us an email, we do have teal ribbons and royal blue ribbons. Royal blue ribbons are for child abuse prevention. So wearing ribbons, making a post about it, that's how you can bring awareness today. April 7th is Wear Teal Day. That's the Sexual Assault Awareness Month Day of Action. And then April 29th is Denim Day. So we do Denim Day to represent that clothing does not equal consent. And this was because of a 1999 ruling in Italy where they overturned a rape conviction because they said she was wearing tight jeans, so it must have been consensual. So this is why we have this campaign. We make posts about it, and we have community partners who tag us. And social media is a great way for people to know about our agency. A lot of people don't really learn about our agency unless it's word of mouth, which usually that means someone has to disclose maybe that they got our services or that's how they heard about us, which can be hard to talk about, right? So by friends, family, or social media sharing that, hey, the Monterey County Rape Crisis Center is here, that's a way that we can spread awareness. And there is a 30 days of SAM Instagram challenge. We are definitely participating in it, but anyone is allowed to also share any post. And so there's certain themes every day where you can maybe choose to commit to one, commit to all. They have winners every day where they give you a gift card as a prize if you win this post. But they're just small ways to raise awareness on Sexual Assault Awareness Month, right? So how can we talk about consent? What kind of message would you like to share with survivors? So if you would like to make a post yourself, if you would like to tag us, again, that's another way that we can spread a bunch of information and awareness this month. So there's one page, and then they will have the second page that will tell you um, the other days and activities that you can participate in. And then also the hashtag that you can do, like hashtag day one. And the agency is called National Sexual Violence Resource Center. Okay, and then I just shared a few positive affirmations here in the corner because since working with youth, it is said that it takes about 5 positive statements to undo one negative statement that they have heard in their life, right? And like even just meeting with the youth, like I'll have them write notes or we'll make a to-do list, and they were like, oh, just hearing them say like, oh, I suck, or I'm sped, or I'm so dumb, or I don't know how to write. Like they really just talk really negative, right? Like really harsh on themselves. And so just being able to tell them like, hey, I'm here because I really do care about you. I think you're so brilliant. I think you're smart. I think you're gonna have a bright future. It really does make a difference. Sometimes you can see the eyes kind of get like a little flustered, a little shy, a little watery sometimes, but these are words that they don't hear often, and it does make a difference for them because they're kids, right? Just like the rhesus monkey experiment that we showed, like we're humans, we're creatures, we create connection, and it really makes a big difference on our mental health for a positive affirmation. So thank you so much for letting me share that. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to let me know.